Okay, aloha. Welcome, everyone. I am Susan Gorman Chang, and welcome to the meeting number 25 of our Red Hill Community Representation Initiative. Our agenda is going to be a little different than it usually is tonight. We have presenters that have some time constraints and some time zone constraints, so they are going to go first. Then we'll have our introductions and announcements, and public comment will begin at 6:30 and end at 7:30. But first, of course, we are going to do our Oli, and I am going to ask Helani to lead that for us.
Olai kaha, olai kawai, olai kai, Hawaii, Hawaii. Olai kaha, olai kawai, olai kai, Hawaii. Hawaii, Hawaii, olai kaha, olai kawai, olai kai, Hawaii, Hawaii, Hawaii.
Mahalo, Helani. So I would like to introduce Don Thomas, PhD, geochemist and director of the Center for the Study of Active Volcanoes. He is going to give us a presentation on the hydrogeology investigations into Mauna Loa and Pearl Harbor hydrogeological units of the Honolulu Aquifer. So if you could share your screen, we would very much appreciate your presentation, and thank you so much.
Okay. Let's see how that works. Okay. Okay.
Sir, could you?
Yes.
Oh, there you go. Okay, thank you.
So I'm going to have to go through this very quickly. I'll be summarizing about 4 or 5 years worth of work, but try to give just sort of an overview of the work we're doing and why we're doing it and how we're doing it, and what we're finding. What we're Just maybe a little bit of background. I've been assisting Department of Health since about 2015 with understanding the hydrogeology in this area. This was after the 2014 release from Red Hill. And sort of as that evolved, it became very clear that none of us really understood what was going on out there. And with the release of 2021, we proposed to do really a broad spectrum of studies of this area to put together the geology, understand to the best we can the rate and direction of groundwater flow, and develop ultimately a numerical model that will describe how groundwater is moving through this area. So among the techniques that we've used, we will sort of categorize land-based geophysics. We've done, let me see, I think I may have started the wrong presentation here. So the field methods we applied: groundwater chemistry sampling, looking at the origin of the water and what its flow path is; onshore geophysics, define characteristics of the geologic formations. The geology ultimately controls how groundwater flows everywhere, but especially in this area, and has extremely complex geology in this region. We have offshore geophysics, where what we're looking for is escape routes for water leaving the island. And this will become clearer, I think, as I show some of the results that we've gotten. We are also doing direct measurements of the rate and direction of water flow, which is this colloidal borescope, where we actually go into the well and look at how water is passing horizontally through the well. And that gives us a very good point measurement of how water is moving sort of within this region. And then finally, we did a dye tracer study where we can then look at, and this is kind of the ground truth, the dye tracer is going to go wherever the water goes. These point measurements have a number of ways that they can be, unclear or uncertain. But with the dye tracer, this basically is going to tell us for sure how contaminants would move, not necessarily the fuel itself, because the fuel is buoyant. It's a hydrocarbon. It doesn't, penetrate into the water table, but the contaminants do, and they will travel the same way the dye is traveling. So once we have all of this data, we then are going to put that into a numerical model and use the data that we gathered sort of to help construct that model and then test that model to see if it can mimic the same groundwater flow paths and same groundwater flow rates that we've actually seen in the field. So let me begin with the the CTD and colloidal borescope work. CTD is basically looking at the chemistry of the water. I'm going to only talk very briefly. We've got a whole raft of data that we're still working our way through, but these are some sort of measurements that we can make in the well. We can look at the conductivity of the water. That tells us how much salt is there. We can look at the temperature. The temperature actually could tell us a lot about where that water came from. Water coming from rainfall entering the system at high elevation is going to be colder than rainfall that is penetrating directly overhead in the flats at lower elevation. The dissolved oxygen can tell us something about contaminants in the water, whether there's been oxygen depletion as a result of contaminants in the water. And then finally, oxidation reduction potential and pH. So I'm just going to show two examples. We've got one example up here. Let's see if I can get a laser pointer here. One example is well NMW 34. It's located over towards IAEA. And another well over here that's located.
Don, I'm sorry,
Yes.
I'm not seeing the map of the wells.
In the upper right-hand corner, are you seeing that map?
No,
That's not
we're not.
showing up. Oh boy, I don't know what happened.
Maybe stop sharing and
Yeah,
reshare.
okay, okay.
Yeah,
Let's see.
sorry.
No, that's surprising me. I didn't realize that this would not show up. Are you seeing it now?
I'm seeing gravity survey and density models.
Let's see. Okay, I don't know. I do not know what you're seeing.
Okay.
Don,
And I know the map you're talking about because I watched the
Yeah,
FCAC.
yeah, I don't. Yeah, because that actually wasn't anywhere near. Is the map showing up now?
It's in the upper right-hand corner. Yes,
Yes,
thank you.
yes.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
okay. Okay, let me
Okay,
see
go
if I
ahead. Sorry,
can.
sorry.
Yeah. Huh. I've lost it in my screen share. I don't know
Yep,
why.
we lost it too. Is there a separate screen with the whole map or is it always in the right-hand?
No, it's in the right-hand corner. Okay, well, Murphy never sleeps. And I'll,
Maybe go back one slide and then forward again. Maybe it'll come back up. There you
yeah,
go. Okay.
okay. Um, okay, so, and again, I'll get a laser pointer here. So this is the NMW 34 well, again, located towards IAEA. And then there's another one, RHMW 06, which is located over very close to Red Hill Ridge and is much more reflective of the chemistry of the water in that region. The next slide, actually, I'm showing you the data from the RHMW 06. And excuse me, let me see if I can get you can see if I can switch back and forth, the temperature is much cooler. The conductivity is somewhat higher, indicating that there is some more salt in that water. Um, the dissolved oxygen is a bit different. The oxidation reduction potential and the pH are somewhat different. Again, this is just an example that we have a very diverse array of chemical compositions in the groundwater within this region. And that's telling us we got water coming from different locations and having very substantially different flow paths. So let me continue. Um, I'm not going to say anything more about the chemistry. I'm just going to talk a little bit about the land-based geophysics. In this case, I'm just showing a survey that was done along South Alava Valley, kind of Malcolm to Mackay. And we did both seismic surveys as well as electrical surveys. And the purpose of that is to try to define kind of the base of the valley fill that is part of South Alava Valley. That was a key sort of point of contention in modeling how groundwater is moving. In my next slide, um, down at the lower end of the valley, we know that this is an old valley that was cut when the island was actually much higher above sea level. And at when the valley had, or excuse me, when the island had subsided, that valley had partially filled in with alluvium and had been partially altered. That's saprolite and alluvium shown here in this image. But we didn't know because that material is very impermeable and would stop water from flowing to the northwest. And so we wanted to know where the valley fill material rose above the water table. This is our water table here. And so we use those geophysical methods and to define, and this is a cross section perpendicular showing the alluvium layers, the saprolite, and the weathered basalt, saprolite basalt down below. That's kind of what that valley fill is made of. And that can significantly um, impede water flow across that system. And so defining those geologic characteristics is really important in doing our model. So I'll move on to our marine geophysics. In this study, we do this from aboard small boats, and we run surveys where we send an electrical signal into the ocean water. It's basically we're pinging the ocean water with an electrical signal. That electromagnetic signal goes down into the underlying rock and material makes up the seafloor, and then sends a signal back up to the surface that we intercept and can interpret according to the resistivity of that rock. And highly resistive rock is generally indicating we have fresh water. Much lower resistivity rock indicates that that rock is saturated with seawater. And so the findings here were pretty striking. We, uh, okay, let's see what, okay. This is a survey that was run inside of Pearl Harbor. You can see on the upper right, the red line indicates which survey this was. And we can see that this is the resistivity of the salt water, the kind of red-brown material. The lighter colors, the green, the yellow, and then the blue indicates higher resistivities. And where the green and yellow indicates brackish water, the very dark blue is indicating dominantly fresh water that is flowing below Pearl Harbor. In this case, that flow zone is between 150 and 250 meters below sea level. So this is fairly deep. And this material is the caprock. As we ran some surveys offshore, we see something very similar. In this case, though, this again, the red-brown is very low resistivity seawater, and then going from seawater saturated rock, this blue here indicates that there is fresh water flowing through the caprock and discharging out into the ocean seaward of where we ran these surveys. And even deeper down, we're seeing fresh water that is below 400 meters depth that is flowing below the caprock. And this is a much different model than the one that we've been working with for the past 80 years. We've always assumed that that caprock was impermeable, there was no water flowing through it, and there wasn't any water flowing below it. These data clearly show that that is happening, that we do have water flow uh, you know, leaving this system on shore, discharging into the ocean. And that will substantially change the flow trajectories of the fresh groundwater on shore. So this is, and I'll show kind of the traditional model. This is kind of a what I call a cartoon. It's just a very generalized conceptual model of what's happening, where we have the fresh groundwater within this basal lens, and it's actually discharging through the caprock and then flowing below the caprock to discharge into the ocean. So I'm going to move on now to the colloidal borescope surveys. And again, the colloidal borescope is really just a fancy camera and an image analysis system that tracks suspended particles in the water column and tracks them as they go horizontally through the open space in the wellbore. And that can give us, as I mentioned earlier, a very nice point measurement of how water is moving through the well. And if we have consistent measurements in multiple wells, that is a pretty good indication of the regional flow. So these are the wells that we have done surveys over a very broad area. And I'm just going to present a few of the data. This is, again, the NMW 34 well. What we see, these are measurements made at different depths from 0.3 meters above sea level to 9.8 meters above sea level. And the flow rates are kind of these columns here. And you can see that we have a very diverse range of flow, and particularly this zone at 8.3 meters, a relatively high flow rate in some parts of the wellbore, and on average, though, a much lower flow rate. Next, I'm going to show you what we call a windrose. And this is a diagram that shows the direction of the particle flow at these varying depths. And for the most part, what we're seeing is water moving off to the northeast, sort of north-northeast to northeast in that well. I'm going to move over to RHMW 06, which is the one closer to the Red Hill tanks. And what you see here is a very different direction of flow. These are going almost due south. It indicates the likely water flow direction is due south in this region. And so that is kind of contrary to what our previous concept was for groundwater flow in this area, because we were thinking that groundwater was moving off to the northwest, and instead it appears to be moving towards the south, which is kind of good news because it says that it's fairly unlikely, based on this data, that contaminants from the tanks are going to be moving over towards the lava shaft. Again, these are just point measurements. Okay, some of the other wells, we've got several wells right in here where we're also seeing groundwater flow going due south. This is in what the area they call the oily waste disposal facility. The Red Hill shaft is right in this general area, and it appears the direction of flow again is towards the south. So then I'll talk very briefly about the dye tracer study. Dye was injected in RHMW08. It's about a quarter of a mile away from Red Hill Shaft. We used an array of different measuring techniques. I don't need to go into the details why, but the dye was injected from the 11th to the 15th of February. There were some that were expecting to see dye within 2 to 3 weeks. The RHMW8 was actually selected because it seemed to be very sensitive to pumping at Red Hill Shaft. And so we wanted to see what the fastest rate would be for water to be moving towards Red Hill Shaft. Instead of a couple of weeks, it was more like 3 months before we saw the first real positive hits with the dye. Initially, we were doing monitoring with Red Hill Shaft pumping at 4.3 million gallons per day continuously. However, with the slow arrival of the dye, they actually cut that back to, I think it's like 1.5 or something million gallons per day, or to 1.4 million gallons per day. So a much lower flow rate, just so as not to waste any more money, any more water than we have to. So I'll show you, this is kind of an overview of what we found. This is the location where the dye was injected. The yellow flags are where we have confirmed hits of dye. The green flags with the stars are where we had some initial hits of dye immediately after it was injected, and those detections went away very quickly. We pretty well concluded that those hits were the result of poor field technique by our contractor who was injecting the dye and collecting the samples. We tried to train them that you don't use any of the same equipment for injecting the dye that you do for collecting the water. It's pretty clear that that guidance was not followed. So we did see some of these hits, and and some of them we're certain they're not real, because there's no way water can move that fast from the injection point to where they were detected when they were detected. So what I'm going to do now is show you where we have the real, excuse me, this is just the pumping. This is just a plot of the pumping at 4.3 million gallons per day. And then the pump was on and off continuously during the rest of the time. So these are the data that we got. These are some of the false hits. RHPO3 and MW27 showed up within days of injection of the dye. And, again, it's not real. It went to zero immediately. But all of kind of these initial hits went to zero, whereas Red Hill Shaft has shown gradually increasing dye detection. Now, this is one of the techniques that we use is a carbon pack dye system. It is more sensitive, but we can't actually tie that to a concentration of dye in the water. It's just a cumulative thing uh, that if you do only dye packs, you can compare among wells, but you can't get at an actual concentration. So we also were collecting water samples, and this is the actual concentration of dye uh, in the different wells. Um, Hold on one second. Okay, well, I can't do that. All right. Anyway, the left-hand scale is 0 to 1 part per billion. The right-hand scale is 0 to 35 parts per billion. And the right-hand scale is only for the Red Hill Shaft water. The rest of the points are, this is NMW 15, and NMW 15 is actually on the trajectory from the RHM 08 to Red Hill Shaft. And it actually saw dye first before Red Hill Shaft did. And RHP 08 is also kind of along the trajectory from RHMW 08 to Red Hill Shaft. So we are seeing a progressive, in most cases, increase. The Red Hill Shaft has some variability. We actually discovered something quite interesting. When the shaft is not pumping, the character of the water changes. There's no dye in that water. And when it starts to pump, it takes a period of time for the dye to start showing up. So we have an artesian system at the upper end of Red Hill Shaft that actually fills the shaft with water and actually pushes water out of the shaft with the pumps off. But when the pumps go on and we draw down the level in Red Hill Shaft, that begins to pull water in from the area immediately surrounding Red Hill Shaft. So what we've had to do is sort of reprogram our sampling to make sure that we're seeing dye concentrations after we have equilibration of dye within the flow system. Okay, and then very briefly, I'm going to talk about the modeling. So this is our traditional model, our traditional conceptual model for how groundwater is moving sort of within Oahu and in this area, where we've got the freshwater recharge coming in, and the cap rock is blocking any discharge here, and there is actually no flow anticipated below the cap rock. And again, that substantially alters what the likely trajectory of the flow is sort of within the area below the land-based part of the aquifer. And again, this is what we believe we're seeing. So bottom line is what we're going to do is a sort of a fairly large scale model that it has a fairly rough grid to then validate that and then do a much more detailed numerical model within sort of the red outlined area to try to describe how the groundwater system is moving. And that's, I think, my last slide. You had presented some questions to me, so I'll try to address those. Based on what we're seeing, yes, it's true, only a few ounces have been recovered, but we suspect that with the flow along that system, that dye is probably going to go out through the cap rock and discharge into the ocean. The plume from the November 21 spill, again, we don't really know where the hydrocarbon is, where the fuel is itself. The dissolved contaminants, though, based on the borescope surveys, appear to be flowing towards the shoreline and either discharging through the cap rock or below the cap rock. Um, and I wanted to respond to this, the cut in funding. It really isn't a cut in funding. Um, it's it's just we ran out of time. We did not anticipate the level of work that was required to undertake this effort. And we thought that, 4 years would be sufficient. It really isn't. This is one of those things that sort of coordinating with the Navy took a lot of time. And then, getting out into the field, making these measurements turned out to be much more time consuming than was anticipated. We are looking right now for additional funding to carry us for another year because during that year is really when we're going to put all this information together and put it into the numerical model. So we've got the field data that we need, but getting it into the model is going to be a substantial task. I've done presentations for there is a Y group, a Vi group that includes some elected officials as well as the chair of Department of Land and Natural Resources is the chair of the Vi group. And I've done a presentation for them, sort of presenting most of these data. And so they are aware of kind of where we are and what we're trying to do.
Okay, great. Thank you. Just very quickly, you said the numerical model by the Navy has to be redone. But it sounds like the Navy wants to open a lava shaft by the end of the year, but it doesn't sound like their new model will be done. Is that correct?
Uh, yes, that's correct.
Their water flow model.
Is this the IAEA lava shaft?
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
okay.
Red Hill. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
It isn't done. Okay, and one more question from Ernie Lau, and then we'll see if we can do a few more.
Okay.
Don, on the map showing the monitor wells and dye detections is north-south vertical direction and is the east-west horizontal direction on this map.
Yes.
Okay. All right. And let's see who was next. We just have a few more questions. If we don't get to everybody, yes, the Lonnie next, but please write them in the chat and we'll get them to Dawn. But I'm going to go Lonnie first.
Okay, thanks, Don. Okay, so on your dye tracer study slide, you're saying that the yellow with the diamond in it is actually the
Mhm.
ones that had that you were able to find the dye tracer, right? And
Confirmed hits, yes.
confirmed hits. So, and then from your presentation, you are from your studies that you've done, you're saying it's a north south.
It appears to be north-south from the borescope data, yes.
And but the RHPO3, which is a yellow one, which has been marked
Yeah.
yellow,
Yeah.
is more westerly. So, and I think that's been the contention, and I just want to put it in a context, is that I think the difference between the model that the US military has been using is they're trying to say it's Mauka to Makai, which is north-south. And then the Board of Water Supply, who had two other investigators look into this water, how the water's moving, which would tell us a little bit, give us some information on how the plume is moving, would be more of a westerly direction. So at this point, Don, do you think we can make any real determination that it is going north to south, or is that still in your, like, you're still working on that?
Well, we are just sort of in the final stages of compiling all of the borescope data. And I only showed you a couple of examples. We got a whole bunch of other wells that I didn't show. There was just no way that I had time to show those wells. And it's going to be a matter of putting those all together and seeing, okay, what is there consistency among these different measurements? Because again, if we have consistency, and we do know that it can vary over some fairly small areas where the measurements are variable. But what we need to look at kind of the whole picture and say, okay, what is the overall dominant direction of flow? That's the first part. The second part is that we are monitoring wells up to the west and to the northwest, which was the feared direction of flow of the contaminants. And certainly, if we see hits up there, we were able to make arrangements to have the dye sampling or water sampling for the dyes continue for another year. So we are going to be continuing that. And that data will be available to us over the next year. And that's going to be very important. If we don't see any dye tracer up there, then I'd have to say that, that's a very strong argument that water is not moving in that direction. Certainly not the surface water.
But we're not
Right.
going to know for another year. Excuse me. We're
Yeah.
not
Well,
going to
not
know for another year.
necessarily. Well, not necessarily for another year, but I mean, it's if we see a hit next month up to the northwest, then we're going to be paying very careful attention to it.
Yeah.
But for
It's when you look
now,
at the map and you look at where RHP is, 03, versus where the dye tracer was put into the water, it's almost
mhm,
a westerly, like it's not,
right.
it's just a westerly direction. So, and then that's, I think the fear here is that it'll
Yeah,
move
of
to
course.
the border
Let me
water
go back
cycle.
to
But yeah, I was just wondering,
RHP
yeah. It's not
03.
necessarily just a northwesterly. I think it's more like, I mean, because again, I think you understand now the complexity, right? You're saying that
Oh,
there's
yeah.
layers. So yeah, I'm definitely, it looks very like west. It's just like from where the dye tracer was put in to where one of the wells, there was a hit. That's RHP 03. That's a westerly direction.
Mhm.
Thank you. I just wanted to point that out, but thank you
Yeah,
for
yeah,
that and keep up with the
sure.
good work.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. And I'm so sorry. We're going to have to, it's 5:40. We're going to have to go to the next presentation. But if people will please put their questions in the chat, we're going to capture all of that. And we're going to get those to Dawn. And I'm sure, Dawn, you'll answer those for us
Yes, of
via
course.
email, and we'll get that information out there.
Okay, sure. Happy to
Okay,
do that.
thank you so very much. This is
You're most
really,
welcome.
really informative. Thanks for answering our
Okay,
questions,
you bet.
or part of them.
Pleasure.
Yeah, more to come. So if you could
Okay.
stop sharing your screen,
Yep.
and
Let's see. Stop share. Okay.
we'll go on to Kat and Eva. And thank you
Okay.
so much.
Okay.
And again, I'm sorry, I deeply apologize for the people whose questions didn't get, but again, we will get those answers from Dawn and get them out to everybody. Okay, so now we have Kat and Eva. Yay.
See if I can get this. How is
Oh,
that?
and let me, yeah, I'll let you introduce yourselves and who you are and what this is about. Thank you.
Okay, hey, sure. Sorry to jump in quickly. My name's Kat. I am here today, really speaking on behalf of myself and a lot of work by Dr. Eva Davis. She's a newly retired EPA hydrologist who spent nearly 35 years working primarily with groundwater contaminant sites to include petroleum on Superfund sites. And I believe she is listening in here today and is going to be available for questions as well. We decided with the time, we are both on Central Time, so we decided I would take the slides, walk through them, and then hopefully draw some conversation and questions from y'all. This is generally a shortened version of what we presented for the NASM National Academies presentation. So I apologize if there's some redundancy there, but hopefully you can get a little bit more out of this presentation than that one. Just to give us some background, make sure we're all talking the same language. Primarily what we're doing today is talking about the sources of criteria that we used in drinking water. So we're going to be using terminology, a lot of acronyms that I had to learn on the fly over the last few years. So, but we do want to define how would you, what criteria would we use to trigger an agency or a municipality from terminating the use of a well as a source of drinking water. And so many of you, I think, here already are familiar with these terms. We've got the TPH, total petroleum hydrocarbons, and I'm drawing your attention here. These were the 2021 environmental action levels. And that's significant because what we have done the last, Dr. Davis joined me the last few months, but really have been looking at this information of all of the 2021 drinking water samples, primarily April through December of 21, but some before that time period and since. But keeping in mind that the levels of TPHG was gas, D for diesel, and O for oil. These were the environmental action levels. So when you talk about this slide, this is from Dr. Brewer, who presented this slide during his National Academies presentation. One of the things we want to keep in mind is that the levels of TPH, the action levels that would trigger a municipality from stopping alerting regulators of that unsafe health effects are based on these TPH levels. So the federal government does not regulate fuel in the water. The Hawaii Department of Health has been given that responsibility. So in 2017, the levels were raised to total petroleum hydrocarbons to 400. And UGL, you can also refer that to as parts per billion. During and just after the 2021 fuel leak, this red box is kind of where I am. That level was lowered to 266 parts per billion. And now the level in 2024 is 91 parts per billion. And that's just a good number. I want you to kind of keep in that mind as we move forward through some slides, because as we were looking at the water test sampling from 2021, this information is very relevant. So we did not look at all contaminants. I primarily had focused in, there are just a lot of different tests that were being run, but I did use TPH as at least one of the major considerations of what I was examining. There were about 150 water reports between May and December of 2021 before, well, let me say May and generally just after the November leak. So these reports range from anywhere from 20, 30 pages to 700-800 pages. When you looked through those reports, one of the things that became evident, and this is a chart off of the Navy's cumulative data, is that RHSF, which is your drinking water, Red Hill Shaft, we began seeing that there is TPHO consistent hits of elevated contaminant in the TPH oil readings produced by the sample. The samples were tested by Apple Labs. And so beginning July 8th and moving on through the summer, those levels were consistently being reported by Apple Labs. And I've just included that chart from the previous page just for you to reference this. So based on 2021 levels prior to the leak, the two boxes in red would have been two exceedances. So these would have been results that you would want reported to regulators immediately. That means that there is what's considered unsafe water being distributed throughout the water system. But you can continue to see that the levels, yes?
Yeah,
Catherine,
Right?
I don't think your slides are advancing. We're still
Oh,
seeing the
thank you.
second slide.
Okay, thank you. Let's see. Let's see what's happening here.
If you try unsharing and sharing again, that might work again
Okay.
to.
Let me do that. How is that?
Now we can see that next one. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for catching that. I did not see that that was not advancing. Okay, this is the chart I was just speaking about that throughout beginning in August, there were 2 unsafe levels, exceedances in those levels of TPH. And as you can see, the level at that point in time would have been 400 to reporting total petroleum hydrocarbon. But you can see that just in the oil numbers, there are elevated and consistent reports, results that were completed by Apple Labs. Throughout May or April through until the November leak, there were 2 labs that were being used by the Navy for testing that we found, Apple and Energy Labs. So leading up to through to September, you can see that Apple Labs is consistently reporting elevated TPH oil results. All right, did it advance this time?
Don't see
Did the
the
slide
advance yet.
and not know what's happening here? All right, let me see if I can. Let me try one more thing. Sorry.
Now I can see it. I hope everyone can.
Okay, so you can see this one. All right. All right, so if everyone, this is the beginning of this slide right here is from the previous page. And again, you can see that August 5th and on August 26th, samples collected were exceedances from what's considered the safe levels or environmental action levels. At the bottom, this yellow highlighted area shows that on September 22nd, some samples collected that the labs, Navy began using Energy Labs. And of note was that suddenly the results appear to show that the TPH levels disappeared from having consistent elevated or detectable limits at that point. Now, when they began using the labs, this became a question particularly of note by Dr. Davis, and primarily because hydrologists and scientists who regularly work with contaminant sites, it is a well-known fact that when you have these type of concentrations of TPH, it tends to indicate there's liquid fuel within more than just the groundwater, but it's also located in the surrounding soil and fractured rock. And this residual would continue being a source of contamination over a longer period of time. So the fact that the TPH oil just stopped being detected immediately by Energy was of interest to Dr. Davis and really warranted her digging in more. And really the slide she put together was just a simplified version to help us understand that the when a liquid such as fuel flows through soil, a residual liquid phase is left behind. So if you look at the red areas, that is what would have been left of the fuel. And that this residual cannot be displaced by hydraulic flushing, and it can occupy as much as 30% of the pore space. And in our case, the JP5, this would continue to dissolve into groundwater over time. And most volatile compounds of residual saturation above the water table will vaporize or dissolve into infiltrating rainwater and continue to contaminate groundwater over time. And that was what really was Dr. Davis explaining to me why that was of concern to her, that the numbers suddenly went to non-detects, because based in her years of work, that was not what is noted to tend to be happening with contaminated sites. I'm going to see if I can advance it this time to have luck here. Can you all see this chart?
I can. Great.
Okay. All right. So what I then began doing is really digging in and then looking at, then if we had detections and we had exceedances, what did that information look like throughout summer and fall of 2021? And so I primarily in this chart, I want you to zero in on, there's 3 columns. I want you to first see this far left yellow highlighted column. These are Red Hill Shaft and Monitoring Well 2254. And just for time's sake, I'm not going to go into the explanation, but Monitoring Well 2254 is essentially drinking water as well. So if I took all of the samples from mainly Apple Labs, and I'll get into later why Energy Labs was a little bit of a little more difficult to use their results, but I wanted just to take the results, particularly of areas of drinking water that had detected reported numbers, results, which would be in this middle column of total petroleum hydrocarbons in the drinking water. So this would be if you added the oil, the diesel, and the gas all combined, which according to Hawaii Department of Health, you need to combine all results into one total petroleum number. And so that middle column are basically the results of the drinking water from Apple Labs throughout 2021 from May to November. And on the far right column, these were the collection dates. So you can see that sample 1470 had a result of 370 parts per billion, and that sample had been collected July 8th. And you can notice that as the dates go later into the summer and into the fall, the numbers on the far left generally are also going up, which makes sense. The earlier a sample is collected, the smaller the number, and as the later the date, the numbers are going bigger. Of note here is this sample 1582. This was the first exceedance that was reported from a sample collected August 5th, and then another sample 1623 collected August 26th. So I'm labeling those first exceedance, second exceedance. And then as you move down, you'll see in these red boxes in the middle column, these are your exceedances. So you have sample in one report, you had multiple samples that were drawn that also were exceedance. Did I just go forward? Excuse me. Now, this light purple area here, everything collected above that shaded area were collected prior to the November 20th fuel leak. So between July and November, you had 3 exceedances from samples collected prior to the November 20th fuel leak, okay? And the orange boxes are TPH results that were nearly exceedances. And you will also note that those have J values, which mean that there was an estimate provided. And just to give you some information, there's 2 1677s here. I'm not going to get into it today, but one sample was collected by Apple Labs and the other sample was collected by Energy Labs. But that is of note there. So what I wanted to do is understand, so if we had 2 exceedances from the summer, a third exceedance from a sample collected November 17th, what was happening with that information reaching regulators, and why were these exceedances unknown to families? So if you go to the next column, next chart, you can see now, instead of looking at by collection date, I've organized all of the results by when they were reported to regulators. So I would been told Hawaii Department of Health says that the report date is on or around the date that they would have received these results. So what I want us noted of concern to me is that if you follow the samples here in the light purple box here again, these are samples that were above this area were reported to regulators prior to the November 20th leak. So as you note, those 3 exceedances, 0 of those had been reported to regulators prior to the November 20th leak. And of significance is that both the first and the second exceedance were not reported to regulators till March and April of 2022, despite those samples having been collected in August. And finally, you'll see here that third exceedance, again, not reported to regulators until after the November 20th leak. Here on the side, there's some notes here, and I know these charts are pretty busy, so I'm happy to answer questions about it. The fact that there were none of the drinking water sample exceedance being reported to regulators, I feel like there's still not been an answer provided as to why. Those reports had been created and validated by the laboratories. So the lab delays were not the issue in not providing those results. And one of the things that I think for the public just to understand, and families that were involved in 2021, these delays in reporting are more than just alerting families to unsafe levels. While that is certainly probably the priority, it also prevents regulators from going back to that same source of water and further analyzing the samples. So for example, the fact that in August of 21, there was unsafe water, by the time Hawaii Department of Health would have received those results in spring of 2022, so 9 months later, it's too late to go back to that groundwater and to that drinking water source, because that source changes over time, right? It's flowing, it's moving. So that does prevent them from being able to do that. And I wanted to finish here with, sorry, I got ahead of myself on this sample. This final chart I wanted to show here is that of concern to me that we have, again, the purple box showing you that labs had generated reports listed above that. So now I've taken those same sample numbers, those same results, and I wanted to know then, if regulators didn't receive those results until spring of 22, when had labs generated those results? And if you look here, you have the first and second exceedance from those samples that were collected in August. Laboratories had produced and validated, the Navy had their validation company validate those results. Those were completed by October 12th and 13th of 2021. And so the fact that those have still not been answered to is a little bit disconcerting to not understand what is now in place to prevent such a thing to happen in the future. Of note in this slide, and I apologize, I'm a little all over the place. I can tell it's late at night. These lab reports, one of the important things that I learned from this and is that before the reports were generated by the labs, the Navy, this is a excerpt, just a snippet out of their chain of custody request and their chain of custody forms. but they request that the labs provide them preliminary results within 1 to 2 business days of receiving samples. And so the fact that they had these results very quickly and then spent months later, I think is just something that the public and certainly Oahu needs to be aware of, and what is now in place to prevent that in the future. So I'm going to move on, and just to kind of drill down on some of that information. I took this slide from Dr. Brewer's NASEM report. All of the areas in black are from his slides, and I just injected some dates for reference to just kind of reorient us to what happened with these exposures in 2021. So everything in red is me. So I wrote there's an exceedance, 2 exceedances in August of 21. The fuel leak happens in November 20th of 21. There's, I should have put this, I moved it here because there was a sample collected November 17th, which would actually put it right here. But when you looked within the report itself, on or around November 24th, the laboratory had completed results on that exceedance. So on or around just after that date, you can infer based on the 1 to 2 business day request that the Navy and AECOM would have had preliminary results. So that would be 2 exceedances in August, a 3rd exceedance of multiple samples, by the way, in the November collection. And on November 25th, you have a fuel leak, and then on November 25th, the residents begin noticing the fuel odor. The 27th, the widespread reports, as many of us remember, the numbers of people grew and who were reporting problems. The Navy shuts down the Red Hill shaft without notifying the Honolulu Board of Water Supply on November 28th. And on November 29th, the Department of Health issues a water advisory. However, like it's been discussed previously, families didn't know to go check the Hawaii Department of Health's website to see that. So I don't personally know of anyone who actually knew about that happening in real time. That is also the dates that the Navy was asking our families to begin flushing our homes, and they flushed the fire hydrants around Joint Base Pearl Harbor Hickam. November 29th happens to also be the same day that Captain Spitzer emailed families saying that there were no indications the water is unsafe. So the fact that you had all of these events and you still had military officials saying there are no indications. So this indications word, I counted at least 3 occasions that I've heard it used through 2 at town halls, and then here with the email of Captain Spitzer saying no indications the water is unsafe. And that to me is not an accurate reflection of what they knew at the time. So I just wanted to kind of include that slide to show you just kind of the exposure sequence as it was happening, to include those exceedances. And again, these photos from Dr. Brewer, know several of you probably these are your photos, but I think that just speaks a lot to what the extent of this exposure was. And then just really briefly, because we're just limited in time today, there were limitations to how testing is completed for JP5, for TPH, in other words, in drinking water. So those limitations really drive home the urgent need for the Navy and AECOM to have been promptly and reporting results because these are not perfect tests for drinking water. You can read through these yourself, but there are multiple issues with the fact that the TPH is not an exact method to detect safety of the drinking water for JP5 and other fuels. It's kind of that's the best there is, in other words. And there's also the fact that there was degradation that creates differences in testing results, but those degraded products. Multiple you'll hear other specialists speak about, because they've been degraded does not mean that they are less toxic. And that's something to keep in mind. And I'm just going to show you a few samples where we see where the Navy does not report all the results that they have. So these were the different types. Just generally, this isn't exhaustive, but these are the types of problems. We saw the irregularities within the reports. And basically, we know that these caused underreported laboratory results. So in other words, what we were looking at in results, many of those were what should be considered the minimum of what the family was exposed to, and that the results were likely much higher. Just the problems, and I just really am out of time today, but there were multiple problems with the energy lab reports, to include that many of those lab reports stated that the TPHD chromatograms were revised, but the reports themselves did not include explanation as to why. And that's from Dr. Davis. That's not, obviously, someone like me would not understand what would be relevant. But she felt like there should have been more explanation to why those chromatograms were revised. And you can see this was one of probably, I think I found, I don't know, half a dozen or more energy reports where this same statement was seen. And if you can see this part of this statement, this was a drinking water sample collected, sample number 1747 and 1748. And of note, on the next slide, I show it. This yellow highlighted area made several statements that just really need to be explained and don't make logical sense. So silica gel testing was originally ordered and it was completed, but then this revised report says that the results were removed, were revised and replaces. I'm sorry, the chromatograms removed the silica gel testing results where analysis was not performed. Well, silica gel testing is only performed when there is TPH present. So the fact that they're coming back now and saying they removed the silica gel test results, these statements, Dr. Davis said, these three highlighted. The silica gel testing was ordered and completed. The results were known and the original lab report was issued. And then the silica gel testing results could not have been provided in the original report if the analysis had not already been completed. The fact that this revision corrected and replaced the chromatograms without explanation as to why is the concern. And then it says we don't know the original result for the drinking water samples 1747 and 1748. So this is why a lot of my charts, I don't include the energy information. There was a lot of irregularities we found within those tests. So I don't have time. My time's up for today, and I'll let people just ask questions as they have. Just final thing I want to share here. I think it's important. This is my last slide, and I'll let others read through. But this is important to note that there was multiple times where we found energy was re-extracting and reanalyzing. And for layman terms, the best way I can tell you, I keep calling it retesting, and all the scientists I've talked to like cringe because that's kind of a layman term, but they were essentially retesting. They were asking labs who had already tested samples to go back and retest those samples, those same samples. And it's called re-extracting and reanalyzing. And this example really shows you that even 10-day difference changes a sample from an exceedance, which is 0.53, which converts to 530 parts per billion, which is an unsafe level, to 10 days later, that same result is a non-detect. And we found multiple reports, I think more than a dozen, where this practice, or at least nearing a dozen, where this was seen. And that was of concern. And anyway, I don't want to keep talking, but there are more slides. This was just a slide showing how the Navy asked the lab to test a sample that had been out of the refrigeration for over a month, and they still said to proceed and test the sample anyway. which is against all standards for TPH testing. And I apologize for the little bit of all over the place, but I will let y'all ask questions. And if Eva is still on the line here, hopefully she can provide a better thorough explanation.
Okay. Thank you so much. That I can, the amount of work that you two have put into this is just incredible. And I really, really thank you for your time. So we're going to go right to the questions. Chris.
Hi, thanks for doing this. This is really great information to have out there, so I appreciate both of you on this. A few questions. I don't know how much time we have, but what do you think can be done? What do you recommend? Efforts for testing protocols to be enforced for current and future testing with the Navy. Is there EPA teeth in anything that you've noticed in your research that we can continue to recommend to our regulators? And I have another one after that.
I don't know if everyone can see that I just screen shared. Are
Yes.
y'all able to see that? Okay.
Yes.
That was some of what we just, Dr. Davis and I kind of discussed briefly. Chris, just to answer your question a little bit.
Yeah. And this is Eva. Yeah, I really recommend that you have a source water for your drinking water that is not affected by jet fuel contamination. It's not just the hydrocarbons that are in it, but there are other additives that are added to jet fuels and other types of fuels that can also be contaminants in groundwater. And to try to think that a well that is less than a mile away from very large fuel storage tanks will remain uncontaminated, to me is just unrealistic. From more than 34 years of working on Superfund sites. We just don't put water supply wells or continue to use water supply wells that are that close to such significant sources of groundwater contamination. And what we're seeing in this data, I think, I would hope would lead to an investigation of the practices used here. And because I would, it's too late to save, the Red Hill community from the health effects of jet fuel in their water supply. But I sure as hell don't want to see this happen to other communities. And that's why I stay involved. And I would really, love to see some action taken to make sure that this doesn't happen again. And so, thank you, Catherine, for the presentation. And I think there are actions that can be taken to prevent this in the future. And that's why we're speaking tonight.
Okay, I appreciate that. One clarification on one of your slides when you said we're down to 91 parts per billion. Is that the new recommendation now? And I don't know when I missed that change. What did dissolved 340 and sheen 270 parts per billion mean? It's in the beginning, toxicity factors as the change of different levels of parts per billion range there. So in the very bottom point, number 5, I don't know. I just kind of wanted clarification on that point. Is that related to the 2024 change? That there's also other additional TPH levels for maybe, groundwater or drinking water possibly. And yeah.
So this slide is from Dr. Brewer's NASM presentation. So Dr. Eva, unless you
sure.
know, I wouldn't know that answer.
Oh, that's right. Okay. Also, one
Yeah.
thing just to note before I get off, the September 2021 with the new lab, if you look at the June 22 report of their own investigation from the Navy that they released July 4th weekend publicly, they had a surge event in September 29th. A pressure surge event is what they call it on page 56. They were
Yes.
doing multiple investigations and samplings in September of 2021, and that's likely why they chose to do a different lab. So I just want to refer everybody to kind of look down that timeline and read that report again.
And I will, Hawaii Department of Health also told me that Navy reported that they began using energy labs in order to expedite testing, because Hawaii Department of Health has had a chronic problem with delayed reporting from the Navy. And I did inquire about this, and Hawaii Department of Health told me that their response was that the Navy was using energy labs in order to expedite and help with those delays. So just, Chris, some other information for you.
Wow.
If I can add a couple of things here again, and I don't know, in the relatively brief time that I've been involved with this, I'm not sure I understand how all the action levels have changed for TPH over time. This is perhaps this slide that's up now is perhaps the best explanation that I've seen. I haven't really comprehended all of it, but the current levels is not an EPA maximum contaminant level for drinking water, but it is according to Dr. Brewer, what is now recommended as the action level for TPH, total petroleum hydrocarbons, in drinking water. And it, as you can see, it is, significantly lower than what they were using as our action level back at the time of the spill, both in 2017 and in 2021. But that is, according to the latest toxicity data, that is their best estimate as to what the level should be. In terms of the pressure surge and testing in September 2021 and expediting testing to use it, the other lab. Yeah, by the time they went to the notice of interest sampling in May or June of 2021, and we're doing weekly samples of about 5 or 6 wells, as well as the Red Hill Shaft during that time. That was a lot of samples being sent to the lab. I can see where it might overwhelm a lab, but I don't see that, that, and as one of Catherine's slides was showing, that, the energy lab was then correcting and replacing chromatograms for the TPH. They need a lot better explanation as to what was going on and why it was allowed to continue for as long as it did, if they were, and why they weren't getting better results in the first place from Energy Lab to continue using them. So there's still a question there as to, were they getting the quality of data that they should have been?
All right. Thank you. Yeah, I think we have time for one more question, and then I'm going to ask the remaining people, and I'm going to call on Jamie, the remaining people, to put their questions in the chat, and we'll get them to Kat and Eva and get responses. Okay, so go ahead, Jamie.
Aloha, Katneva. Thank you for all the research you're doing. And Ernie, correct me if I'm wrong, but in 2013-14 leak, wasn't the action level at 50? And so the 91, I've still always had a problem with. Mine is more of a comment with a question or a statement. I thank you guys for going back through June, August, September, and October, because families were getting severely sick then, including mine. But what I did notice in my neighborhood, I saw in your slide, October of 2021, and I actually have video of them opening fire hydrants and releasing the water at that time. Could that have been one of their strategies when they were doing all this extra testing in order to bring the levels down without the public knowing? Sorry, I'm having
Uh,
symptoms
Eva?
right now. I'm sorry.
I don't,
Yeah, and I'm I believe it was in September of 2021. I don't have the notes in front of me at the time. I apologize. That they started, well, let me back up a minute. The notice of interest, I believe, required them to sample weekly from the several of the monitoring wells around the fuel tanks, as well as the Red Hill shaft. And then I believe it was in September, towards the end of September, that they started sampling the Red Hill shaft on a weekly basis, or not, excuse me, not a weekly, but a daily basis. And to me, that kind of indicates that they knew there was some problem. Otherwise, why would you increase your sampling frequency? And so to hear that they started trying to flush the system in October by opening the fire hydrants, you know, I can't I can't hardly speculate even, but like I say, to me, looking at the fact that they increase their sampling frequency makes me suspect that they knew there was a problem. But of course, that's just speculation on my part.
and there was a spill in October, the oily waste disposal facility. So again, there's outlying questions, and there was definitively some irregular testing and sampling going on September through October. And so to answer your question, they flushed in November before telling regulators that there was an exceedance. So it's speculation at this point, but they did it in November without alerting anybody. So could they have done it in October? I guess only they could answer that, but I think it's a question worth asking. And what was the sampling? Why the irregularity in that October time period? So.
Well, yeah, they were doing it over the summer, and then I know I specifically have video of them doing it in October as well.
Yeah.
So
My computer froze, or I would pull up the actual date of the. I had some October dates where there was. You can see the lining up the oily waste disposal facility with some testing right around that time period. So it's another investigation that's worth. Hopefully that there's ongoing interest in understanding. Hopefully regulators are looking at that.
Well, thank you.
Logs of when they open those fire hydrants. Do you know that?
I didn't hear the question.
if they keep logs of when they open those fire hydrants to release that much pressure and that much water, is that an avenue we can go down researching?
I personally don't know. I don't know the answer. I wish I did. I don't.
I'll start digging.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I want to get through some other thing, but this was a wonderful presentation. Thanks everybody for their questions. If you could maybe stop the share, we could. Yeah, great. And thank you again for all of your continuous work on this. It's an amazing amount of work, but you've really come up with some really, really good points that, yeah, that we really need to investigate more. So I am going to move on to introductions. We wanted to give our presenters the chance to present first, again, because of their time restrictions. So we had elections. There's for some of the seats, and we have some new folks. So I will start with myself, and then I'll pick another person who we can popcorn around till all the CRI people are introduced. I am Susan Gorman Chang. I was in the original class for a year of the CRI. I was out for a year and I came back on for this class, I guess, and I was elected chair. So I will pass it on to Chris.
Hi, all. I am recently voted in by this lovely panel and the previous panel as an affected family member, or affected member. And I lived in Capilano Beach Homes during this event. We were there through 2020 and 2021, up through part of 22, when we had to leave to get medical help for all our families. So I appreciate being part of this. I like watching these and hope I can keep them with their cleanups, remediation, and keep them on their toes.
Go ahead and pick someone else. Oh, you're muted.
Tara Rojas, first name I see on my screen. Is she on? Is that not?
CRI folks. Okay, let's pick Jamie.
Aloha, I'm Jamie Simic. I was just recently elected to the CRI as an affected family member. I was in Hawaii for several years, starting in 2003, and lived through the spills. I am very passionate about the CRI and also helping Oahu and bringing truth and accountability and transparency to what has happened. I'm very honored that the previous panel elected us to be here, and I look forward to the work, continuing the work that everybody has started and pushed through, no matter how much they tried to stop us. And I will go to, one second, Mariko.
Hi, I'm Mariko Jackson, and I am a newly elected community member for the board, and just trying to catch up with all of the wonderful information here. And Ilani.
I'm not a Red Hill CRI member today. I am a sub representing, I'm here for Mai, and she represents Native Hawaiian interest. I was on the board on the CRI for 2 years. My name is Heleni Sonoda Pale, is born and raised on Oahu. Aloha. Sorry, Imiloa. Imiloa.
Aloha mai kako. My name is Emilo Borland. I'm a newly appointed Native Hawaiian representative for the CRI. I'm excited to be here. My family's from Makalapa. I grew up over there. I went to Makalapa Elementary School. So really honored to have this opportunity to represent the neighborhood I grew up in and the people of Oahu and all the affected family members and the community. So mahalo nui for the opportunity. I'll pass it along to Bill.
Aloha, I'm Bill South. I'm representing the Sierra Club. I've been a member for about a year. I've been living in Kaneohe for about, well, it's 40 years now. So my background's in agriculture, and I was formerly worked with the Department of Hawaiian Homelands.
And then we have two more people substituting, Melody and Lacey. Just say your name and who you're subbing for, if that's okay.
Oh, I'm so sorry about that. Aloha, I'm Melody Aduha, former CRI member, and I am substituting for Mia Lisa Otis, and she is a Oahu representative for CRI.
Thank you. Oh, I'm so sorry, Robert. Go ahead. I missed you. You are a new member.
Hi, I'm Robert Huber. I'm a new member. I'm a local realtor. I became involved years ago with Sierra Club in California. Also here in Hawaii back in 1974 with some of the greatest senators in Hawaii's history regarding cleanup of Kohlrabi and also the submarine canyon in Monterey Bay. Help the report and get that going. I'm always trying to get my feet wet in something. I'm just very happy to be here. Thank you so much for bringing me on board. I'm also a RAB member for the cleanup of Pearl Harbor as well.
Great, thank you. And we have Lacey.
Hello, I am substituting for Michelle Poplar, affected community member. I'm also former CRI, so just want to say thank you to Susan for continuing on with this and congratulations to the new members.
Thank you. All right, I think that's everybody. Raise your hand if I missed you, but I think we're good. Okay, so we're running a little late, but that's okay. I'll make some announcements and then we will go into public testimony because we always like to leave a whole hour for public testimony because that is why we're here. Okay, so we did our introductions. Okay, so some report came out called the University of Hawaii Economic Research Organization, UHERO for short. And a report, it's about 30 pages long, and it's Enduring Impacts of the November 2021 Red Hill Fuel Spill, Health, Social, Economic, and Trust Implications. There's a link on the agenda for that report. Okay, second, we have a new school being constructed. I think Robert brought that to our attention at Joint Base Pearl Harbor, very near Red Hill. We want to consider the water impacts and the concerns. That may be a topic of our next CRI meeting when we have more time. Third, PFAs were detected in the Pearl City Board of Water Supply wells. There's a link there to a very brief press release on that. And there'll be on November 22nd, there'll be a water bottle exchange and a Red Hill 2021 spill anniversary on Saturday, November 22nd at Capilina Beach Homes. We don't have the time yet, so watch emails and social media on that. Impacts of the federal shutdown on Red Hill cleanup, closure, and CRI. So, the EPA was able to meet for the FTEC meeting and another meeting with the House here in Hawaii. But then as I understand it, they were furloughed. I believe the military has been furloughed. So I think things are going to be delayed. originally we were going to have a meeting in November with the EPA and the Navy, but that's been delayed because of the furloughs. So yeah, it is impacting us for sure, unfortunately. And let's see, the Red Hill Registry, I'm going to ask Jamie if she can give a little shout out to that, please.
Aloha. This is from Tara with the Red Hill Registry. Given the long history of the environmental contamination of the Red Hill facility, it was thought about creatively and worked with the community to come up with a way to capture information from people who may have been exposed before, during, and after the November 2021 fuel release. So right now they are doing open enrollment for baseline enrollment, which is individuals that were contaminated with the water between 11/20/2021 to March 18th of 2022. They also have an expanded enrollment, which is anyone that was on the Navy water line on or before and or after the 11/20/21 spill through March 18th. The immediate surrounding areas of the Navy waterline and unexposed housemates of exposed individuals, which means people that may necessarily live in the same household but don't, their wife has symptoms, but they necessarily don't report symptoms. It's important for them to get a whole picture of everything in a cohort. It is a questionnaire that begins with a consent form because individuals need to be over the age of 18 and provide consent. There's 3 versions. You can consent for yourself, your child or minor, or another adult if you're a legally authorized representative. Right now, funding is for 5 years, and it's important that we all register in order to gather that data, but also in order gathering the data will also help us to keep the registry alive.
Great. Thank you so much, Jamie. Appreciate that. And it is very important, continues to be. So we've got to keep the word going out about that. Thank you. Okay, well, we are coming to public comment. So I'd like to turn the floor over to folks. Anybody? I know Tara, you had your hand up earlier, but I don't know if that was from the very first presentation or if you wanted to make a comment. Oh, go ahead, Tara.
Okay, aloha, Tara here.
There
Can
you
hear
go.
me?
We can hear you.
Okay, and I cannot undo my video, but no, yeah, mahalo nui for all the work that you all did. So my comments slash questions were for the first like two presentations. One, if you could, I know it said it was gonna send it to email, but for those who maybe just need a layman's term in 1 or 2 sentences of that first presentation, because sorry, I was driving when I was listening to it. What would it be? 1 or 2 sentence summary of the first presentation, you know, with the graphs and everything. The flow, the die, if you could do that. Number 2 was the second presentation. Is this enough data then now, you know, kind of like what Chris had asked earlier, to implicate, you know, just sort of the Navy and the DOH for failing in the responsibilities, even maybe on the length of like criminality or even like negligence, yeah? And if this energy is that Navy third party testing for expediency, you know, it's, for example, that high fluctuation of exceedances of the TPH, and then all of a sudden they come in and the consistent 150 stable, that's like kind of right there, you know, it's clear cut evidence that in addition to all the other evidence that they're playing with the numbers to fit their narrative. You know what I mean? And so that was like a comment for that. And then finally, these, if the DOH and or like the EPA, you know, they're setting these arbitrary kind of, I'm just saying like that, arbitrary TPH levels because, you know, there hadn't been any data or has never been before needed. So now that there is a precedent and successful court case, the historic win, right? And now that there is no excuse to not use the data and testimonies and families' experiences to set a true and pono, meaning safe TPH levels, of course, aside from 0, this is what kind of should come out of this, that I'm thinking and I really hope can be done. Like how you said, somebody asked about, wasn't it 50? I think it was Jamie that asked about 2014, 15. Wasn't it 50 before? So now that they have all of this, they can't use excuse. We never had to measure, jet fuel in the water before. So comments, last questions, and continue to hold the TOH and Navy accountable, because if they did it once and they've been knowing about it, preliminary testing and still not, they're gonna do it again. And that's what you want to avoid. So how to hold them accountable, maybe another court case or something.
Yeah. I know, Ernie, it looks like you brought up, should there be another investigation by the DOJ? Do you want to speak to that a little bit? I saw it in the chat, that's all. Or not?
Yeah, no, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Thanks. I just got unmuted. So, yeah, I wasn't sure how the current case got started, but it looks like the U.S. attorney is the lead to prosecute that case. So, I wonder if going back to the U.S. attorney and providing this evidence to them to see if they want to actually pursue some more investigation to this matter.
Yeah, that's a
So
great idea.
that's kind of that's kind of my thought, but I've through the years, always suspected some kind of maybe data manipulation, and maybe this is just another example. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we maybe we can look into that, getting back to the U.S. attorney and presenting this data. That's great idea. I do have to, let's see, I have to correct myself. Let's see. Okay, sorry. Just to clarify, the military is not furloughed. They still work whether or not the government is shut down. Thank you, Lacey. I apologize for that. And there was something else. Yeah. Okay. Okay, well, the shutdown. Okay, the November meeting is not happening because of the shutdown. The EPA is hoping the shutdown ends in time for the CRI to meet with the Navy in December. That's our hope. So a lot of their stuff is, the agenda has to be 3 weeks ahead of time. And so the longer they're furloughed, the more things, kind of back up. So, yeah. Oh, Kat can certainly share the data that points to the data irregularities if anyone wants to draft an email. We will discuss that. Thank you. Yeah. I think that's worth looking into. Robert?
Hi there, real quick. I just want to know if there's going to be this recording is going to be available, sent out into PDF, or where it'll be available for this meeting.
And let Rosalie answer that. Robert, could you mute? Yeah.
This meeting will get posted to the CRI website, and then we'll also broadcast on Alelo. And whatever information we learn from our communications with experts and guests, we'll post also to the website and email out to people who are signed up for the CRI email list. And if you'd like to be added to the CRI email list, you can email the CRI at redhillcri@gmail.com. I hope to answer the question.
My goodness, this will be a record. If we go early. Is there anything we want to circle back on? Talk more about?
I would be curious to know people's thoughts on next steps in terms of I mean, these are two huge revelations, right? One is that we really don't know where the fuel went. We don't have a good assessment of the way in which groundwater flows. And yet the Navy is hoping to reactivate drinking water shafts by the end of the year. So one, what are we going to do to try to, at least interrupt that until we have more information so that we know how increasing pumping from these shafts might affect the flow of the groundwater and therefore the plume of contamination. And then second, how do we what does the CRI do with this information about the irregularities in the sampling? How do we instigate or encourage the Department of Justice to investigate? And I think that would be a good discussion for the CRI members to have.
Yep.
If you want.
Go ahead, Robert.
Yes, thank you. I think we should engage with Sierra Club again, legal counsel, and in reference to a cease and desist order against the Navy and that whole surrounding area with the school that's new and being built, and or any other lines being opened up, freshwater lines being opened up, what they consider to be freshwater, which is not. And until the testing is done, I think it's in order. I think we need to bring that about to council and see what get some feedback from Sierra Club on it.
Yeah, I can't speak for Sierra Club, but it sounds like an option. Let's see, I've got Chris. And then Bill.
Okay, just making a note. Is there anything we can do with Department of Health that is supposed to be our regulator on behalf of citizens in the normal fashions to protect public health? How can they should we be sending anything? Is there anybody we can work with in that team, either with groundwater and with drinking water team with Department of Health that we can be sending, encouraging to be looking at testing results and asking those procedures and how that gets out to public? And then what kind of testing procedures can they implement? Because aren't they the regulators to tell the Navy what they're supposed to be doing with that? So I think that's kind of where we have to go eventually, but I just don't know, asking for input here and thinking Department of Health is one option that we should look into.
Yep, totally agree. Did I see Bill? Did I see your hand up?
Yeah, you did. I think nested in the possible litigation is either the withholding or fudging of the information, the data is that's a very important consideration that is going to be one of the, I think, cornerstones of our arguments there.
Yeah, agreed. We just need, kind of think about drafting a letter to the Department of Justice, I guess. Patty asks, in the chat, are there any legal means to stop the reactivation of the Aiea Halawa shaft? Any lawyers? Any legal means to stop that activation? Good question.
It's a difficult one to answer because there's a lot of discretion in the Safe Drinking Water Act given to the Department of Health. And so the opportunities to litigate are somewhat narrow. So it kind of depends on a whole host of factors about whether we would actually have a claim that could be raised in court. Yeah, for better or worse, that's the system that we have, gives a lot of deference to the agencies.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, so I guess the most we could say is we're looking into it. Uh, but it's, we shouldn't hang all of our hats on that one hook.
Yeah.
I remembered one other thing I was saying that Eva had brought up with really we need to be using a different water source. So is she saying that they really cannot reuse any of these wells and they really need to be putting in a more larger capital projects of new wells? Is that what that new wells and definitely farther away from tanks? I don't know if she's still on.
Yeah. Is Eva still on? I don't think so. It is really late there.
Yeah, I think she's gone. But yeah, I think that was what I took away from her presentation or her comment was that really the primary aquifer, the Halava Pearl Harbor aquifer that we are dealing with is contaminated. And it's, it's very sus in terms of our ability to be able to drink clean water from that aquifer. Then this is probably the reason why the Board of Water Supply is investing all kinds of money into trying to find other sources of water on Oahu, which, I mean, I don't know if Uncle Ernie is still on the call, maybe he can comment on that, but it's, yeah, from my perspective, I feel like we should be finding any other water source than what has been affected or touched by Red Hill in some way. It's just outrageous to me that they are thinking that they're going to turn this water back on and the GAC is going to be enough, the granulated activated carbon filter is going to be enough to, take out all of the contamination. It's such a huge risk to all of the, uh, you know, innocent people who happen to live on the Navy water lines. It's outrageous.
I agree. I'm thinking the GAC isn't getting enough information out to as to the replacement of their filters. When I read those going in at first, I believe they're supposed to replace them every 6 months, and I hadn't really heard that they've been doing that either. So they aren't really getting the info out for us to know how often they do replace their filters in the GACs. And I don't believe it picks up all contamination. So a lot of concern for using the wells.
Yeah, they had picked a 6 month time frame for replacing the filters based on an guesstimation about how much contamination the GACs would pull out, and they have captured very little, like teaspoons amount of fuel constituents, pollutants. So the plume is not near where any of the GACs are, or not near where any of the monitoring wells are. So we don't know really where it is. And we saw that in Dr. Thomas's presentation, right? Like of the 20 pounds of red dye that was released into the aquifer, they have found ounces. So it's such a huge gamble to reopen these shafts and to use any water from these shafts that were affected by the contamination. It's such a risk. We have no idea what we're getting into. It's not worth it, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. And like he said, like Don said, the Navy's model didn't take into consideration what he discovered, how the fresh water is flowing underneath the cap rock into the ocean So their model, if their model isn't complete with what's really going on, then their model should not be used to reopen the wells. I mean, that's crazy, you know, and like you said, they've only had a few ounces of that dye located. So yeah, what's our hurry? I mean, you know, if he thinks it's going to take how many more years to actually track down all the dye and figure out what's going on under there, then why don't we wait? I don't get why the Navy convinces the DOH to make that call. It just seems reckless. I agree.
Yeah, to
But
Auntie Patty's point, that's why the public's got to push back.
yeah, yeah.
Department of Health seems to be too aligned with the Navy at this point.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
Yeah.
Kat, go ahead. Oh, and then Tara, sorry. Go
I,
ahead,
w- I
Kat.
would, I was just going to say, I think the Department of Health would be a great asset to get buy-in from them regarding the fact that they cannot rely on timely and accurate testing and results based on, they've already experienced that for years. They already were struggling. That's why the Navy told them they were bringing in energy labs to help lower that or increase that speed of the results. So if we could get them buy-in on that to use that, because they were not aware of these exceedances. That was their, so the fact that if you could use that because there's been zero change, meaning regulatory change. Nobody's reported anything change. Nobody's reported they had to start doing reporting, labs reporting directly to regulators. Nothing changed. So all they did was say, hurry up. And the Navy now touts a 3-week turnaround reporting results because they were touted that several of their meetings they held this past year. And I am still, I don't buy that there's not any type of opportunity to manipulate something. Why not require as a penalty for what they did in 2021? Why not require the laboratories to report directly to regulators?
Yeah.
That would solve a lot. And so if you could get DOH to understand how bad 2021 was, maybe they would then get involved in backing to block this opening of the well. The fact that they're just going back to the same thing that will happen probably, and we will eventually study the earlier years, but I suspect that while everyone's watching, they get all their everything in line and they test faster and they do what they need to do. And then as time goes on, they'll go back to what they've done all along.
Yep.
So that was just my 2 cents. I think DOH would be a great one to see if we can't get buy-in.
Yeah, I'm trying to think how to do that. I know we've met with Kathy Ho in the past. I don't know. I don't know how to shift her view.
Well, so one thing that has bothered me all along about this is that so much of what congressional hearings regarding Camp Lejeune point to exactly what repeated at Red Hill. So they actually testified, water experts, that the fact that the laboratories don't own the test results, and so regulators don't get those results directly, they go through the Navy.
Oh.
That type of practice was already identified. Delays in receiving results identified at Camp Lejeune. So I guess what I'm saying is, if you could Department of Health just hear this? Like, these are not new things happening. These are repeating those same things testified to by water experts as what contributed to Camp Lejeune. So for me, this keeps just haunting the fact that we're just repeating and expecting a different response.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so change it, do something and actually change how things are done. So I do think we need some regulators to come in and really swing hard at this.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think the data irregularity slides have been presented to DOH. Maybe what do people think about, really putting thought into putting this together and approaching Kathy. I don't know, is Ernie still on?
I'm here. Sorry, having
Yeah,
a
oh,
lot of
no,
trouble with
no.
Zoom tonight. But
Oh, that's okay. Yeah,
yeah,
I don't know. Is it worth it trying to approach Kathy again with these data
I
irregularities?
think Kat and Ava's presentation tonight was excellent.
Yes.
And maybe a presentation to Kathy, uh, Dennis Lopez, Joanna Cito, uh, might be worth a try.
Okay, great.
We
Right.
did request a meeting with them and have not heard back from them for several weeks. So someone asked in the chat, have the data irregularity slides been presented to DOH? And they have not by Dr. Davis nor myself. So
So what I could do is I could reach out on your behalf to Kathy Ho and strongly suggest that they allow have you folks present your information to them.
I think
Yeah.
Dr. Davis and I would greatly appreciate any opportunity to do that. Thanks, Ernie.
Okay. So Kat, next week I'll put in a request to Kathy, Joanna, and Dennis that you be able to give them the opportunity to present to them and any experts they
Yes,
want to bring to the table.
that's excellent.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yay, got a
Yeah.
plan there.
Well, but I want to be clear. I can't make any promises because I don't know how much influence I have on them. It'll be, but at least give Kat an opportunity to present.
Yeah,
I understand, Ernie. Yes. I think maybe hearing from another, a municipality could benefit. And I know Dr. Davis is very willing, very willing.
Okay,
yeah,
will
sounds like
do.
a plan.
I'll reach out to them next week.
Great, thank you. And then, the thing about the Don Thomas's presentation, and thank you, Helani, for pointing out in that one slide that, yeah, that one yellow area is to the west of, right?
Yeah,
Is to the west.
I just had watched this presentation before I came on here, and it was a different presentation that he gave. And I think what was very clear, I think the other one, he gave some information that he didn't give here and vice versa. But I think what was really clear in the other one was that this is not an exact science, and that the models that they're going to be building is going to be an ongoing thing as they get more data. And that from my understanding, all they're going to finish doing this month is gathering data points. And then the hard work comes with building the actual models. And even that is not an exact science. I mean, even in his previous presentation, he uses a lot of, like I mean, I'm not putting down his work at all, but I'm just saying that it makes you come to some realizations that modeling and Ernie's always said this. I mean, other environmentalists have said this. It is complex. Nobody really knows what's going on underneath there in the aquifer. So, and I think this, tells us there's a lot we don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, the fact that he would I would like to see the other points. I would like to see the other, because he said that's not all the tests they've done, right?
Yeah.
And I would like to see all of that data. But again, it's the agenda, like how the agenda of trying to convince people that it's coming, it's flowing from Maka to Makai when it is moving west. It's obvious.
That's the word we have to get out. And it just, and he's right. Like you said, Helani, you can study this forever, right? But I just kind of feel like since he's had some big revelations about the freshwater under the cap rock and whatnot, and that wasn't included in the Navy's numerical model. It's like, okay, back to the drawing board. You can't reopen a shaft in 2 months when you have to completely redo your model. I just feel like it's premature, you know?
And you're right, absolutely right that it is irresponsible to
Yes.
reopen the wells without this model being done.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
also like they really can't factually say that the water, the fuel, the plume is not moving west. And
Right.
you know, you could use the data both ways.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Was it Tara and then Robert?
Okay.
And then
Yeah,
Chris.
aloha. Yes, exactly. So what you guys are talking about, what came to mind was exactly we need a public campaign about what you mentioned, Susan, about the dye flowing under the cap rock, and what you just said, Healani, that they cannot reopen if they don't have this data. So thus, what Ernie suggested about him, you know, reaching out to request DOH to see this presentation, because I cannot believe that the DOH did not reply to Catherine's, you know, request to do the presentation. So to that, I also want to ask, can we, the public, attend? You know, can we attend so that when Catherine is presenting to DOH, that there is public record, you know, of it, in addition to the CRI meeting. So can it be held in a public forum, a town hall type? And finally, yes, I forgot who mentioned it, that the lab reporting directly to regulators due to data irregularities and all of that documented. I just want to reiterate and just, you know, say that that's awesome. That's a great idea. And just a couple more. DOH, is Kathy Ho, is she the only contact person or decision maker? You know, or is she the only one? If so, like, you know, she really needs to step up and hear definitively Catherine's presentation. And last one is Ernie. I went looking online for, you know, how to contact you, and I know there's probably a reason why you don't have individual contact info. But if we wanted to make sure something gets to you, like, is there a contact info, or how do we get in contact with you, Ernie, if we have like questions or, you know, concerns for that, Ernie?
Tara,
Yeah,
Tara,
go ahead.
yeah, the best way is probably because I get maybe 100+ emails a day.
Yeah.
You could email me at elau@hpws.org, elau@hpws.org.
E-
But the best way
oh,
is probably
email.
to my secretary, by calling my office at 808-748-5061, 808-748-5061. Her name is Kim, and she'll make sure the message gets to me.
Okay. The other one was elau@bws dot
Elau
org
at
or com.
H Elau, ELAU at hbws.org.
Oh, org. Okay. I wasn't sure what the ending. Okay, mahalo nui. And then just to let you know, I don't know on this Zoom, but we couldn't turn on cameras.
Yeah,
And
sorry,
that was
Tara. I think that's user error. Like, we are not Rosalie.
It's
oh,
true.
okay. Okay.
And we're actually using someone else's platform. So I'm surprised it's working as well as it is. So sorry.
Okay.
Don't
Okay.
jinx.
Yeah.
No worries, but yeah, so just again, the public campaign, Kathleen really needs to present this to DOH, and yeah, labs directly reporting to regulators, and mahalo nui, Ernie, and everybody.
All right. Thanks. So we got Robert and then Chris.
Hi there, everyone. Hi, Ernie. This is for you. I have a question. It's actually, I just want to have some clarity for everyone about we're talking about all the testing, and as we know, this is all the Department of Health and presented to the state of Hawaii for the testing for these wells. But as far as when we talk about the Navy, the distinction I want to make is that those water lines where the Navy property starts at Red Hill, they have every right to turn on that clean drinking water line whenever they want to. There's nothing stopping that. So in other words, those kids could be affected up at that new school. Is that correct? Anytime?
I don't know where the new school's actually going to be located. If it's off the Navy's water system, then yeah, they'll be getting the Navy's water.
Navy's
And
water, right? And that's the distinction I wanted to make, as opposed to, we're talking about all this testing and everything. They can, in other words, they can do whatever in the hell I wanted to.
yeah, they can. And the
Got
in
it.
terms of the Navy is well on the way, I think, to try to get Aiea lava shaft their Aiea lava shaft turned on. I thought the
Uh,
Navy mentioned that they have maybe conditional approval, but I
uh,
don't think they have final approval. And also for Red Hill Shaft, which is they want to install a water treatment system, and I think the estimated budget might be about $500 million. That
Good luck,
they
right?
may have gotten Department of Health approval of the design. I'm not. This is not official, but so they may be well underway to
Uh-huh.
in their consultation with the Department of Health. Ultimately, their ability to turn on reactivate these two locations as drinking water sources will be the Department of Health's decision.
Uh, Ultimately, it will be in the Department of Health's decision.
Yes.
Okay. So when you say ultimately, would that be in the final approval phase prior to them turning anything on?
Before they can reactivate them and start pumping water from those two sources into their drinking water system, which is also regulated by the Department of Health, they have to get Department of Health approval.
And that we're talking about the new treatment system. We're not talking about just opening up the clean water drinking lines as of on their land now. Is that
Um,
correct? Is there,
from what I understand, I think their water system has been cleared by the Department of Health. It's when you add a new water source or an existing water source that you're installing a treatment system that didn't exist before that they'll need health department approval.
got it. Okay, great. Thank you for the distinction. I appreciate that.
Yeah, sorry, Robert. I didn't quite understand your question in the chat, but I understand
Oh,
now.
no. Yeah, no, that was the question. I just wanted to make the distinction so we're all clear on where all this, the responsibilities end for us, where they start for us, where the Navy is, where the state is, where the BOH and DOH and everybody else is, as far as our old Kuleana,
Yeah, so just to clarify, this all flows down from federal law, something called the Safe Drinking Water Act. And in Hawaii, the EPA has given primacy or like delegated authority to our State Department of Health, primarily through the Safe Drinking Water branch there at the State Department of Health, to administer the federal laws on behalf of the EPA.
Wonderful. That's
Thank you.
good to know. Thanks so much.
Okay, thank you. And did I see Chris and then Jamie?
Real quick, and I put it in the chat too. I'll look back, but to what Heliani was saying, that they used to have a western flow on their water flow reports. So there's a 2005 or 2015. So when the spill first happened, I pulled a lot of data in and I saved a lot of things that I can't find online anymore now. But that's where I will go try to find it. And I'm glad I saved some things. Even just their PFAS reports that they took down. So I think they didn't realize so many things were public before. But I will try to see what I can find. But they used to have water flow reports that did show the westerly trend.
Wow.
And
Awesome.
they've changed their tune, but only after spills do they change their tune.
Yeah.
So,
And then
um,
rush to reopen. Yeah.
yeah. And another thing on the school, I did put out an email to the Department of Business, at the state to ask. They do the annual report on construction, on military lands, and I don't see any info on the school. But I guess my main concern I kind of want to mention at this meeting is uh, how much water will that put on how much water use will that put on the system? And isn't that a concern with a well shutdown and our conservation needs for Hawaii? So, as well as, are they doing it to new connects? Have they built new infrastructure piping, or are they just going to old piping because they're considered cleared and safe, I guess? So those are concerns I just want mentioned here.
Yeah, I think maybe we can have that as a topic for the next CRI meeting. I think that would be really good, and we would have time to kind of look in to see what we can find. Yeah. All right. Thank you, Chris. And I'm so excited to hope you find the westerly. And Jamie.
This is a question for Ernie and the CRI members. I don't know if anybody is tracking that there's been some new reports on Joint Base Pearl Harbor page from residents up at AMR stating that since October 6th, with the oily sludge, that they are notating a foul odor in their water coming from the shower or the kitchen all the way to the shower. Has there been an uptick in reports? One, and then I have a second comment statement that regarding testing and stuff, and I've said this before, we know that they're planning on reusing Red Hill Shaft. They say it's up to the public, but we know, or not Red Hill Shaft, but the site of the facility. I am a firm believer that we should be advocating for them to not use it and tear it down, because I believe that a lot of our answers are in that soil and in that facility if they remove all of the tanks. Is that an avenue that we're still advocating for and fighting for?
Okay, let's see. Can you go back to the first question?
Sludge, has there been any uptick in residents calling the Board of Water Supply? Because there's been reports on the Joint Base Pearl Harbor page that since the oily sludge removal began in October 6th, I believe the post stated, they are reporting foul odors, just like similar to what we reported during November, where you would get that very foul odor in the water, and they're reporting it all the way from the kitchen sink to the shower, and they're not knowing who to call or who to report to. Has the Board of Water Supply been getting any of these phone calls?
I don't believe so, that we've received any calls, but I'll go and check with my communication staff if those calls, if we've had some of those calls. Yeah, I think the complaints or calls are probably going to the Navy's own emergency response group or whatever function they now have. Yeah, but as far as I can tell, I haven't seen any calls.
Okay.
Okay, and your other question, I'm sorry.
It's more for the CRI and altogether. Your thoughts on, do you believe that under the facility or in the mountain per se, behind the tanks and with the aquifer, if we were to remove those tanks and not reuse them like the Navy wants to, part of my belief is why they want to keep them there is because it's covering up the evidence of the contamination over the decades.
Yeah, there's still the whole mystery of what's leaked out of that facility, of those tanks and the pipelines over its 80-year history. And at its peak, it could store 250 million gallons of fuel. So I know that they're cleaning out the tanks, but they're not removing the steel plate liner. And a concern is, what might be trapped between the steel plate, quarter-inch steel plate of the tanks, the liner system, and the concrete behind it, and there might be trapped fuel from past releases there, but they don't want to actually do any destructive removal of that steel liner. They basically want to clean the inside and then let it sit there. They are proceeding, I think, to go toward removing the pipelines that connect the tanks to Pearl Harbor, and they're removing fuel from that. So I think on their app they now have pipeline fuel, residual fuel or sludge removal, tank fuel and sludge removal, and I think they might be in total. It might be around 25,000 gallons in total from both.
Do
So
you think that that would be a good
I'm
avenue
sorry.
of do you think that would be a good avenue of advocacy for the CRI to point out or to call, to
Um,
continue to for the removal?
Yeah, I think the CRI could advocate the complete. My fear of leaving the tanks there as is not removing the steel liner will there could be trap fuel behind there that won't be addressed. And also, I I want I want this facility be disabled in a way that it will never, that the Navy or Department of Defense, or now it's the Department of War, can actually change their minds in the future and bring stuff back and store it there at Red Hill. So I support the removal of the pipelines. That's a good step, but pipelines can get replaced. As long as you have enough money, you can put new pipelines back in, and basically the tanks will still be intact but empty. I want to make sure that they can't even do that without any major work. Uh, so it'll be I think something to see what the final decision is with the Department of Health and the EPA on final closure requirements. They submitted closure supplement number 4. Uh, and I think the Department of Health, if you go on their website, you'll be able to find their comments. Maybe the EPA might have comments on closure supplement 4. But what is the final closure plan that's going to get approved by the regulators? That's what I would like to see too.
Yeah, me too. It's scary.
Yeah, so I appreciate everybody's efforts, to continue to advocate and pay attention to this important issue, because it's not going to go away soon, and we need to ensure that the Department of, I mean the Navy is held accountable for the long term, and also that our regulators are doing their jobs.
Absolutely. Well said. Thank you. All right. Wow, we still have a few more minutes. But yeah, to answer your question, Jamie, yeah, I think that is something the CRI, we've just had so many other things, but yeah, that's the long game, is to make sure they're not used again, and to advocate for doing whatever it takes to really get the tanks out of there so they can't be used again, because I agree, there's no trust there. Who knows? All they have to do is bring up the what do you call it, national security, and then because how many years were those tanks secret, right, till what, 1994, I mean, crazy, right? It was leaking all that time.
Like what Ernie's saying, with it being trapped behind and leaking into the concrete, some of the reports that I've read, it's stated that under certain tanks, it's leaking through the concrete into the basalt. Which I think I've brought up the Board of Water Supply before, so that's about a year and a half ago. And so those are things that play in my mind of those tanks we need to make sure that it's never operational
Agreed.
again.
Yeah. Totally.
No, thank you, Ernie.
Yeah, thank you, Ernie. And everyone. Anybody have any last comments? We still have like 5-ish minutes left. We good?
Susan, I'm sorry, I might have missed this, but did you already talk about how the Navy is replacing water lines right now on Joint Base Pearl Harbor Hickam?
No, I didn't because I don't. Do we have the exact
No,
specifications on
we
that?
don't. No, we don't
We've
know a
just
lot
like,
about it. Yeah,
yeah, we've just kind
we're
of heard.
Googling and stuff, but we've seen on base we've seen some signs that are like announcing that water lines are being replaced as a construction project. It doesn't seem to be or they don't mention Red Hill at all, and I think that's probably intentional. But I think it's a good thing that they are replacing water lines, because we know that the pollutants tend to like stick to the sides of
Yeah.
the pipes inside, and so
Mhm.
and that's why fuel kind of gets released sort of randomly, and people are getting random bouts of symptoms, and so the fact that they're replacing pipes is good, but we don't know a lot about those details. And I'm particularly concerned about like Capelina, for example, because they are not part of the military base anymore, but they are still, being served water from the Navy. I want to make sure that Capelina gets its pipes eventually replaced. And we also want to make sure that the water heaters get replaced because that has also been raised as a concern about a place where the contaminants are hiding.
Right.
But generally I think so people should keep an eye out if you're on base. Look for the big construction announcement signs that say, it says it's something like Joint Base Pearl Harbor Hickam, water improvement, water pipeline improvement, something along those lines. Anyway, we need to research that more and find out what's going on.
Yeah, and we need to have like people take pictures of the signs and make a list of, okay, now they're doing it here. Now they're doing to make sure it happens everywhere, right? I mean, that's what we want. Plus Capelina Beach homes, yeah. And to really ask them some pointed questions about what water lines exactly are being, is it right up to the homes and then, but not in the homes? I mean, but I agree, it's good, it's good. But yeah, we need more information because we just sort of heard like scattered sightings, I'll say. Okay, Chris and then Helani.
One thing came up that every time we talk, I think of other things. Sorry, on Don's presentation, I believe it's the one that I watched. He kind of went over a little bit, but the temperature, conductivity, and the pH. When the conductivity said it was high, he said that meant more dissolved solids, and I kind of want to explore that question with him. What did that mean? Does that really indicate like more contamination, or is he just saying, higher dirt, as a layman term? pH with high, he's saying elevated acid. And what is that indicating? Is there more he can explain with that? And what is that data telling us? And that was on the NMW34 Wellner IAEA, I think when he was talking about that. But yeah, so there was another, but I'm getting too tired, so I can't remember what.
Maybe you could put that add that to the
I
chat,
will,
and
if
then
I
you're going to
remember.
capture all that. Thank you. Okay, Helani.
Oh, yes. So, is there an email people can email if they have any tips that they can give the Red Hill CRI? So like
Ooh.
if you have information on the water lines, like, and I've heard from residences at the Pearl City Peninsula that they replaced the hot water heaters.
Oh,
After
wow.
like 2 years
Yeah.
of advocating for that, they finally did it for some homes, but they're not saying it's because of Red Hill.
Right. Interesting. But yeah, do we have a CRI email? Oh, here we
Yes,
go.
Yes,
Yes, there we go.
the CRI email is redhillcri@gmail.com. And you can email that address to be added to our email list to receive updates like agendas for meetings, information that we gather, updates to the website, things like that. You can also email that address to be able to share information. You know, if you have questions that you want experts to follow up on. Yeah, that is a general email address that goes to the CRI volunteers, and we'll filter those messages as needed. But that's the best way to get a hold of us.
Great, thank you. Okay, we will close out with Tara. Tara? Did you mean, maybe you didn't mean to have your hand up? Okay, you're muted if you're trying to speak, Tara. Okay. Oh, she can't unmute.
Okay,
Okay.
now again. Sorry, it wasn't a meeting. Okay.
Thanks, Mariko.
Mahalo nui. What was I gonna say now? Oh, okay. Can maybe from between now and the next CRI meeting, will there be like action steps like for like the public campaign? Like I saw that no data, no wells or no use or something like that. Like action steps instead of like the next meeting and then like kind of, you know, in between
Yes,
things that we can
yes,
continue doing. That one. And then the second one was just like how, you know, Tita Mai or Tita like Healani, just a little bit pronunciation, if you don't mind me kind of adding it in. So if you kind of look at like, you know, Tita Healani's name, like the A. So Hea, A, and then so like all A's in Olelo Hawaii, if you don't mind. But it's the same pronunciation always. So like Healani, Tita Mai, so it's Ka, like Kapilina. The Kapilina. So like just, you know, pronunciation for like the Inoa, the name purposes. Just kind of adding that in. So if that helps, uh, just to have that connection. But yeah, we'd love to stay in touch with you all to do the next steps, like for Kathleen's presentation to DOH, the public campaign, you know, flyers, or just we all share, you know, all on our feeds, on our stories, and finding out about that school that really concerns, you know, me, even though
yes.
really didn't find it, but like what can we do for that too? And then of course not reopening the well, so making sure any permit does not get approved regardless of their conditional permit.
Right, right. Yeah, we've got a lot of information, like fire hose information coming at us. And so, yeah, we kind of need to think about what, you know, next steps are. So yes, we will be doing that. And thank you. It is 7:32. So I think we're going to close. Thank you, everybody. Wonderful meeting. Mariko, you were amazing on Zoom. And yeah, thanks everybody for their comments. Very, very informative. Thank you. Bye-bye. Aloha.